All right, welcome everyone to launch a profitable newsletter for your small business. We have a new presenter to Boston Business Mentors, and we're very happy to have him with us today. We have Steve Strauss. Before I turn things over to Steve, I do have quite a few new people in the audience today, so I do want to talk to you very briefly about Boston Business Mentors to make sure that you're taking full advantage of everything we have to offer you. Our goal is small business education, whether you're in the idea phase, you're in the planning phase, you're in the growth phase or exiting phase. We have information on our website, resources, templates to download, some really great blogs, actually. Lots of great information there. Workshops and webinars are always free. You also have full access to the recording of educational webinars that we've already done. We have a really nice group of topics, a variety of topics. So check those out. If there's something you're looking for, it is searchable, so you can look through there real quick and find that topic. There is no doubt mentoring is the most important thing we do. I think it's one of our highlights. Mentoring is always free as well. We work as a team. Our volunteers I think they're the best in Boston, Massachusetts area, and they have a huge scope of skill sets, and they just work together to make sure that you're successful in reaching your goals. Perhaps you just need someone that's a sounding board, or you've suddenly found yourself trying to struggle with a certain issue. We can help you find the resources so that you can overcome those obstacles and be successful. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Steve, and welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Teresa. Great to be here. Hey, everybody, let me share my screen really quick here. Okay, there we go. Uh, there I am. Okay, so great to be here. Great to be with you. Great to be with my new friends at Boston Business Mentors. I will say I have a long association with. I live in the other coast, Portland, Oregon. Fun trivia fact: Portland, when it started, they had a coin flip. Heads, it was going to be named Boston. Tails, it was going to be named Portland, and tails came up, and that's why I live in Portland and not Boston, number two. And anyway, my daughter went to school out in your neck of the woods, spent a lot of time there. She went to Clark, and love Boston. And lucky me, I get to be here with you guys today. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I am the small business columnist for Inc. Magazine. I've written 18 books. There's my fourth child right there, the Small Business Bible. And I have been writing online and creating content online long before being a content creator was a well-known thing. And I've had newsletters forever. This is one of my very favorite topics because, in fact, newsletters are my main focus of my writing today. Aside from the books, aside from writing for USA Today as their small business columnist for over 20 years, newsletters are what I find to be the most interesting and valuable and powerful weapon in my arsenal and for the small business brothers and sisters that are out there for them as well. So I'm going to be sharing quite a bit today about my own newsletter, which is right there. You can see Notes to an Entrepreneur, and you're going to see a little link in the bottom left, news at planetsmallbusiness.com, plugging my own newsletter. And I'm doing so because not to impress you with my numbers, but to impress upon you that what I'm doing and what I've done, you can do as well, and you should do as well, because truly this is the new golden age of newsletters, especially for small business. So that's what we're going to get into. We're going to essentially talk about four different areas today. Just the strategic power of a newsletter, why it's so important, how it can make a huge difference, whether you're a coach, a small business owner, an entrepreneur, you want to start a business, any of those types of entities, you yourself can and should have a newsletter. Why? Second, content strategy, how to build your list, because your list is, as we're going to talk about, the critical element here. Then actually getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty, not a lot of how do you start a newsletter per se with points and clicks, but we'll do a little bit of that, picking the right platforms, things like that. And at the end, we're going to do some Q&A. So let's dive into it. Okay, why newsletters are hot again, right? When I talk about newsletters to people, they're like, huh? What, Steve? Newsletters? What are you, 2002? Well, yeah, there was an era, and I had newsletters back then too, but I never took it seriously until about 3 years ago because newsletters are hot again, and there's all sorts of reasons for it. Let's just get into the first ones. And I'm going to do this. Pull this maybe over there. Well, you can turn attention into income, right? If you're sending out a newsletter on a regular basis to a list, people are going to start to pay attention to you. And when they start to pay attention to you, they're going to like you. And once they start to like you, they're going to want to buy from you. That's how it's going to work. You're going to build a list, and I'm going to actually have a slide about this in a second, but a list that you own. It's not social media where LinkedIn owns the algorithm or Instagram owns the algorithm. You own your own list. We'll talk about why that's so important. A newsletter is a profit center. As I always tell small business people and myself, you have to have multiple profit centers when you run a business, right? Well, a newsletter is one of the easiest ones that can consistently make you money. So not a lot of time and effort you have to put into it every week. Outsized returns often. It'll warm up your audience, right? You're writing to them regularly. They get to know you. My list knows me well. There's probably not a few of you on today's call from my own list. And it turns you into the expert. When you put out a newsletter on an issue of mutual interest and you're sending out the information every week, you're the expert. And here's the thing about experts. People like to hire experts. People pay experts more. So just for starters, there's, excuse me, 5 great reasons. Now, a newsletter simply is not just simply putting out content. I want you to realize what it really is. It is a business asset. It's a customer list. It's a list of warm leads. It's a social media feed, all rolled into one. Now, how great is that? And if you do it right, it doesn't cost, it pays. It's paying you money. It's making you money. Because what is the name of this webinar? How to create a profitable newsletter. Not just a newsletter, but a profitable one, right? What you're going to find is, as you do this, that list is going to become one of your top business assets. It's a list of customers, potential customers, warm leads, people who like you, people who like hearing from you. How valuable is that in your small business to have a list of people like that? Not just someone who comes in the store or someone who clicks on your website, but it's actually somebody who's, think about this, who's asked to hear from you again, because that is what opting in is. You opted in to hear from me today and to hear from Boston's business mentors. You know, I once did an interview with a woman who created Constant Contact. And she explained to me the power of the opt-in. When you have a lead magnet, which we'll talk about, somebody opts in, they want your newsletter. What are they saying? They want to hear from you again. Now think about that. How valuable and how often does that happen in business? Not very often. They want you to market to them. They want to hear from you. So you create a great opt-in, people want to hear from you. That is small business gold. All right. Let's see a couple more reasons why newsletters are great. As I said, this is a new golden era of newsletters. There are especially two new platforms. One is called Beehive, and the other is called Substack. And these are platforms where you can host your newsletter. Now, you can host it on Constant Contact. You can host it on MailChimp. You know, there's all sorts of them. But these two are the new ones, and they're both really great. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Beehive only because that's the one I use and have had the most experience with. Email marketing, look at the second bullet here, has the highest ROI. The Email Marketing Institute estimates that for every dollar spent on email, you get $36 in return. The highest return ROI in marketing is email, $36 for every dollar spent. That's not just hard to beat, it can't be beat. Think about your inbox. What is your main business tool? Sure, you have apps. Sure, you have tech. Sure, you have AI. We all do. Still today, all these years later, email is what we check several times a day, sometimes more than that, right? But if you're landing in someone's inbox and they love it, how great is that? All right? It is direct access to your audience. And it's much higher trust than social. That's just been proven. When someone's writing to you, when I'm writing to you, and you're getting my newsletter and you're getting my email, and I'm sharing a stupid joke, whatever, it creates trust. So that itself is super valuable. Now, I mentioned this from the top. I wanted to drill down on this idea a little bit more, and that is owned versus rented attention. When you're on social media, I have 100,000 social media followers that I've created over the years. You know what? Big deal. You know what? Oh, someone follows. Well, everyone follows everyone. It's not that big of a deal anymore to have followers, right? Because on social, especially now, they've learned those social platforms. Mark Zuckerberg et al. Have learned, they're not just going to give you that attention. Often you have to pay for it, all right? Or, and this has happened to me recently, they changed the algorithm. And all of a sudden my list kind of went away. Not my list, but my followers, right? Didn't get the same reach I was getting before. But when you own email, when you own a list, that is your list. You own that list. No one else does. You do. So if you give a list, you create of 1,000 people who want to hear from you. Incredibly valuable, way more valuable than having 1,000 social media followers. You're able to create long-term value and be able to create a relationship with those people far easier than when someone's on social and they're doom scrolling and they see your quick post and on to the next one and on to the next one. Whereas in the inbox, you have a newsletter that people like, they pay attention to it, you own it, no one's going to change the algorithm on you. So this idea that you're going to own your list, it's essentially your customer list. People who really are into newsletters, people who really know email, that list is, they say, and I'll say, their most valuable business asset. Their most valuable business asset because it is a list of people who like them, want to hear from them, that kind of thing. So owning your audience, I just can't stress enough how important that is and what a big difference that can make. Right? And now here's what newsletters are and what they are not. They should not be seen as a weekly chore, and they definitely should not be random updates. What it is a simple profit-making system. It's a new profit center. It's a simple revenue system. If you look at it that way and not as something you have to do or have to get out, but actually it's a way to create that relationship and make some money, which we all like doing, there we go. That's what we're looking for. So let's get into how you would actually set up one of these valuable, profitable, fun, interesting, fun for you to create newsletters. And what I want you to do is think about some of these things that we're going to talk about in this section before you launch. Okay? So first thing is, what I want you to understand is, how do you make money? So I've talked about that newsletters are a way to make money. Well, there's really 4 ways that you can make money on your newsletter. There's a lot more than 4, but these are the 4 basic ones. One is you sell your own product or service. So you have a yoga studio, let's say, okay? And every week you send out yoga tips and health tips. You figure out what your audience likes. What do they click on? One of the other great things about newsletters is you notice what your audience clicks on and you realize what they want to hear about. And then you start to do that more. So maybe you send out this yoga newsletter, and every week you have a section on not new yoga poses. That's dumb, but new health tips. And all of a sudden your audience really likes the new health tips. Then maybe I'm going to refocus the newsletter on new health tips, and they really like it, and your open rate gets more, and your click-through rate. And at the bottom of every newsletter, we're having a special this week on new members. All of a sudden, you're selling your own product inside the newsletter. Or sponsorships. I mentioned Beehive. Beehive is an amazing platform because they actually have their own ad network. And if you buy one of their paid plans, they have a free tier up to 3,000 subscribers. But beyond that, you can buy for less than $100 a month a paid tier, and they're going to give you access to their ad network. And every week, just like I you're going to get offers from different newsletters, from different companies. The yoga company is going to hear from a supplement company that wants to advertise in the newsletter. So you're going to be able to get sponsors, or you have your own sponsors. That's going to be a great new asset for them to advertise in, right? Or affiliate income. What's an affiliate? It's just, it's a commission salesperson. That's all it is. And maybe there's somebody who wants to advertise in your newsletter, and for every click you get them, they're going to give you, a nickel, something like that, or a dollar, whatever. Depends on how valuable the click is. That's called affiliate income, okay? Or repeat business. Maybe your old audience, your current customers remember you. One of the great things about newsletters is it keeps you top of mind. I want to say that again. It keeps you top of mind. If you have a list and you never email your list, you're missing out, right? And they're not thinking about you. You want to have people remember you, or, oh, that Steve guy, he writes about entrepreneurs. I love hearing his stuff. Oh, he's doing a webinar tomorrow. Wow, I'm going to do that. Whereas if I didn't mail my list, nobody from my list would have known that I'm doing this webinar today, and they would have been thinking about Steve. And they may not hire Steve to help them create their newsletter, which is what I do, or to help them create their content, which is what I do. So by emailing people consistently, you are going to get more business because your current customers are going to remember you. If there's nothing else you take from this, that is the reason, if you have a business right now, you need to have a newsletter, because you want people to remember you and come back and hire you again and again and again. So look at that. 4 easy, great ways to make money with your newsletter. Well, here's an example. This is an email I sent out not too long ago. One of the things I have done quite a bit of is teaching small business owners how to get corporate contracts. So I sent out the email that gets you paid by a big brand, and I sent this out, and I got 3 coaching clients out of this, right? And I'm not doing that program right now, but nevertheless, it was at that time really great. And this is just something that I do. I reminded my audience of what I do. And hey, you want to get some, big brands to sponsor you? Talk to your pal Steve. He might be able to help you, right? Talk to you. You might be able to help them. So here's a reality check. And, so I'm waxing poetic about newsletters. And I'm waxing poetic about newsletters because I like them. I think they're great. And I know they are. And let's remember that, it's not just all sunshine and roses, as they say. It's not instant money. Typically not. Unless you have a good list and you start emailing them and you have a good offer, right? You have a good list and you have a good offer, fantastic. But if you don't really have a list yet, or you don't have an offer yet, it's going to take a little while to get those things going. That said, having a small list is fine. Now, my list personally is about 20,000 people right now, right? That's 20,000 people who want to hear from me. When I say it's valuable, that's valuable. But if your list is, I launched a newsletter just 2 weeks ago for a new client, and she does medical writing. She writes not dense stuff, but working with pharmaceutical companies to help create their content in third world countries. A very specialized niche. She only has 500 people on her list, but she's getting tons of people who want her coaching program in 2 weeks already because it's so specialized. So if you have a small list, it can work. You have 100 people to start your list. That's fine, all right? This is perfect for the small business, as I said, the creator, the entrepreneur, the solopreneur. This is how you have outsized reach in what you're doing. Starting a newsletter is easy, quick, you get inbox attention and instant credibility. Who doesn't want instant credibility, right? And this is super important, I'll mention this again down the road, consistency wins. Consistency wins. You need to hit them again and again and again and again in their inbox for them to really start to pay attention and notice your newsletter and have them like it and have them hear from you, right? Do that, then they're going to start to really notice it and like it. And newsletter reading is a habit. It's not unlike, to date myself a little bit, reading a newspaper, right? It becomes a habit. Well, the same thing is, and I'm sure this is true for you, with your favorite newsletters. Oh, I get that newsletter every Wednesday afternoon, and I love that newsletter. Well, once you become the Wednesday afternoon person, they're going to love your newsletter. So consistency is key. All right. So we're still talking about the before your launch. One of the things I want you to think about as you're thinking about, okay, so Steve, I hear what you're saying. I should have a newsletter. It would really help me. It would help my business. Here's what you want to think about. Who's it going to be for? Who are you going to write for? What is the problem you're going to solve? There's a guru in the newsletter space, a guy named Matt McGarry. You might have heard Matt, maybe you haven't. But one of the things he says is you always want to think about that one person whose problem you're going to solve. If you can solve a problem for that person in your newsletter, they're going to want to hear from you. You also want to think about what you're going to sell, right? These are just some upfront things. Who is going to be for? Who are you going to write for? Me, I write for small business owners and entrepreneurs, right? The problem I solve, I make it a little less lonely. I write these fun. My newsletter is I tell this backstory of typically famous entrepreneurs before they were famous, at that critical moment when they figured something out. Tend to be really engaging, fun stories. I send my newsletter out in the evening. So I say, go to bed tonight inspired and then steal their strategy tomorrow. Because then I'll have some links about how you can steal their strategy. In fact, I just told this quick aside, fun story about Tommy Hilfiger. Okay? And Tommy Hilfiger, when he was just an unknown designer, no one had ever heard of this designer, really wanted to become a world famous designer or a well-known designer or at least have his own house. He couldn't figure out how to break out. He was just working for somebody else, couldn't get noticed. He was just another drone in the machine. And he had some people in his family who believed him and friends. And they said, we'll back you. You come up with an idea. We believe in you. So he went to a PR agent and he said, how can I break out? What can I do? And the PR agent came up with this idea, which was audacious, and Tommy loved it. And he said, let's do it. And what it was they bought a billboard in Times Square. This unknown guy bought a billboard in Times Square comparing himself to all the great designers of the day, which were Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren and Perry Ellis. And they said, who is Tommy Hilfiger? He is the next Tommy, the next Ralph Lauren. It was outrageous, and it worked. He got instant attention. The next week, he was on the Tonight Show, and he became Tommy Hilfiger. So it's stories like that I get to tell, and you can see I'm enthusiastic about them, right? People like to read them, and I'm getting lots of new clients in the last 2 years since I've launched that newsletter. So then finally, pick a provider, MailChimp, Beehive, Substack, whoever you're going to use, right? Think about what you can do in your newsletter that would be unique and different and special. Unique and different and special. Right, now, then you're going to have to build an audience. And what you probably have heard this advice before, but you really do want to niche down, right? You get a big general audience, you can be generally ignored. But if you have a specific audience, people are going to subscribe. And we'll go into this is the next slide. Having a clear audience wins. I'll give you an example. You're giving just general business tips. Meh. Who needs general business tips? ChatGPT can give you general business tips. But if you're creating business tips for local Boston retail owners, okay, think about that. Oh, I might really like that, right? And think about it. If you own a retail store or a successful retail store in Boston, and all of a sudden you're giving tips for other retailers in Boston, okay, that's fantastic. And you're going to be seen as the Boston retail expert. And what will that do for you? What kind of opportunities might start to come your way if all of a sudden you position yourself as the Boston retail expert? So you see how being specific makes a huge difference. All right. Or marketing tips versus a new newsletter I'm launching, which is called the Shoestring Marketing Minute. Right. And, 3 times a week, I'm going to send out just a quick link of a cool marketing tip, right? That's not going to cost you anything to implement versus marketing tips. Meh. Or I'm going to help you with your weight loss journey. Or I'm going to talk about how GLP-1s can really help you become a healthier person. So do you see what I'm talking about? Being more specific, creating a newsletter as you're analyzing what you're going to do, niche down, and maybe even niche down some more. Instead of having less of an audience, ironically, you're going to have a bigger audience because within that network, okay, how many retail stores are there? How many thousands and thousands and thousands of retail stores are there in Boston, right? I wander through, and we all know, right? So many. So it's not that you're going to not have an audience. You're going to have a very specific big audience. Okay, so those are things to think about. Now, what we want to talk about is what you're going to send specifically and how you're going to grow, because I've talked about the importance of having a list, right? So it's super important to have that list. All right. And how do you do that? How do you create it? What do you say? And these are all the questions you have. Well, your friend Steve is here to help you understand what to do. All right. So, how do you create this list? How do you grow it to thousands? Well, there are some very specific strategies that you can use, and I'm going to mention here at the bottom, Cody Sanchez. I'm not sure if you know who she is. You probably have heard of her. These days, she's kind of known as the woman who teaches people how to buy boring businesses, right? So, how to buy a car wash that just earns profit, how to buy a laundromat, right? How to buy an HVAC company, and not to be the owner operator, just to be the owner. So you buy an HVAC company, you invest the money in it, and it's a quote unquote boring business, right? But you're going to end up finding out it's a fantastic investment because they make they make bank. Now, how did she get into that? Well, she got into that with her newsletter. She used to work on Wall Street. She was an investment banker. She did very well for herself. And then she decided, she wanted to be an entrepreneur. And she started out creating a newsletter. And you can go onto YouTube. And I would suggest, if you like this idea, what I'm talking about today, you might want to do this. Go onto YouTube and Google Cody Sanchez on YouTube and how she started. And I'm going to tell you, just so you know, because she started with no different than you, no different than me, which is she had an idea. And she was going to call it contrarian thinking. It was not about how do you buy boring businesses. That came later. She just had an idea. She wanted to share her business knowledge, be a contrarian thinker. So she cobbled together a list of her friends, her family, some business associates. It was about 100 people. She hopped on to, I think it was Substack, but it doesn't really matter what platform she used. I do think she's on Beehive these days. And she just started sending out her newsletter. It looked very rough because it was very rough because, good is the enemy of great or whatever, however that goes, right? She just wanted to get it out there and it didn't have to be perfect. And I'm telling you the same thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just at some point have to hit send. That's kind of the hardest part. You come up with the idea, you do it, you draft it, you write it, then you rewrite it, stop, hit send. That's what she did. And it grew to 100 people, and then it grew to 200. And then she kept trying different tricks to grow it, like giving away a free lead magnet, which we'll talk about here in a second. And she grew it into, then she stumbled upon, and she found out that her audience really liked this idea of boring businesses, because she had bought, I think it was, a car wash, okay? And her audience wanted to know about how she did that. And all of a sudden, she became this multi-millionaire, gauntlet about boring businesses, but start out with a newsletter on a different subject. Okay, so you're going to create your customer list. You're going to use your friends, your colleagues, your contacts, your social media followers, however many you have, and you're going to cobble together your first list. And that's how you get started. Okay, and you just get started by getting started. All right, then now, how do you grow that list? There's a picture of me and Barbara Corcoran. I was at an event, and she was kind enough to videotape an interview that I had with her, and I gave that away as a free lead magnet. And a lead magnet is what it sounds like. It is a thing to create leads. It's a magnet. So it has to be something super valuable that people would like, that's related to your newsletter, and you give it away for free, almost for free, for an opt-in, right? We've all done it many, many times, right? So I had people who wanted to hear Barbara's tips on going from unknown to known. Right? She had some publicity tips and PR tips that, were really great in this video interview. And I was giving that interview away to anybody who wanted to sign up for my newsletter. And it related to my newsletter, right? Because my newsletter is about how do you break out, right? The interview was, how do you break out? So you want to think about what kind of lead magnet can you create that would relate to your business, that would relate to your newsletter, that people would want, and they're going to give you their email address in exchange to do that, right? So you're going to create some kind of lead magnet based on your audience, and you're going to post it. You're going to post it on your social. You're going to, you're going to mention it in an email. Wherever it is. You're going to put it on your website, and people are going to start to opt in and get it and want to hear from you and want to get that thing. That's how you're going to start to grow your list. You come up with a great lead magnet. I mean, this is a whole nother webinar in itself, and maybe I'll come back and we can talk about how to create great lead magnets down the road. But that's what you have to do, is create a lead magnet, get people to sign up for it. That's how you're going to get people to sign in to your list. So, what kind of newsletter can you create? I'm going to get a sip of coffee here, I'll tell you. I mean, there are all sorts. But I think they kind of down to a couple different ideas. One is just informational. It could be news, like if you get 1441, you might have heard of, is a news digest. Or it could be industry updates. There's a very big newsletter called Industry Dive. And Industry Dive now has Construction Dive, and they have Travel Dive, and they just do industry by industry updates. It could be thought leadership. It could be AI, although I would highly suggest not to create an AI newsletter about AI, because there are no shortage of people trying to teach you how to use AI in newsletters, and you're just going to get, lost in the flood. It could be an inspirational newsletter like mine, Notes to an Entrepreneur. Or I mentioned this thing, Joker Mag. I recently ran across this. This is a young man who writes stories about sports heroes when they had a problem and they had a breakthrough. Michael Jordan getting cut from the baseball team, things like that. So maybe your newsletter could be inspirational. People will love that these days. It could be curated links. These were very popular. Tim Ferriss has a newsletter called 5 Bullet Friday, I think. Yeah, no, I know it is. 5 Bullet Friday. And every Friday he sent out his 5 bullets. He kind of created this whole idea of a curated newsletter. I mentioned newsletter operator, that guy, Matt McGarry. In my world, he has a fantastic Saturday morning newsletter with a bunch of just great links that he comes up with all week long and then shares. So maybe in your industry, in your world, you can do this. You can do the same. Or maybe it's a long form newsletter, whereas it's a long essay. That's kind of against the grain these days, but they work. I'm going to give you an example of one here in a second. Or it's a short form essay. I'm going to show you one of those too. So there's all sorts of different ones that, and what you want to do is find the one that interests you, that's not going to be too hard for you to create, that you think builds your brand and your audience is going to want to hear about. You connect all those dots, then you're on to something really great, I think. So here's the link newsletter I mentioned, right? Curated links. So this is Newsletter Operator, the future of financial newsletters. Click here. Inside Dink's Taylor Dink's referral program. 10 lies stopping you from building and monetizing an audience, right? Click links. How easy is that to create? Really, this could be created, with the help of AI, especially, in a half hour, this newsletter. But it's super valuable. Or here's a long form. Now this is a writer I like a lot. His name is Tim Denning, and he sends out once or twice a week these long essays, maybe 2,000 words. If you're a writer, very long. I'm 39. Here are my 11 money cheat codes I wish I knew in my 20s. And it works for him. And he's made it, a big name for himself, writing long form essays. Yeah, he masters social, very big on LinkedIn. But nevertheless, here's just an example of a long form essay, right? Let's see if I have the other one I wanted to share. No, I don't. Oh, well. So links, shorter form, long form, informational. All right, so ideas. You probably can't see that. There we go. So ideas for your newsletter, and you already have these. You could answer a common customer question. There you go. There's a newsletter. You could share a quick win or a lesson or an insight from your business. Boom. You got a newsletter. You could highlight a popular product or a service. Break down a mistake to avoid. That's a fantastic one. If you're in some kind of world where people make common mistakes, or mistakes are costly, or whatever mistakes not costly, right? And you could recommend maybe a tool or a tip or a resource. Those are all newsletter ideas, right? And just think about the newsletters you get that you like the best. What do they have in common? Maybe there's something you could steal from those. Hold on, there we go. Right, now I mentioned using uh, AI to draft your newsletter. Um, so you can absolutely do that, and a lot of people are doing that now. I will really caution you: AI slop is a thing. We all know what it is. We all can see it. I've been, as I said, writing a long time online, and when AI first showed up, it stole a lot of clients from me. But not anymore because we all know what bad AI writing looks like, right? So, and what you don't want to do is use bad AI writing in your newsletter. Here's how you can use AI in a smart, great way in your newsletter. So you can teach your AI your style, how you write, and that can save you time and it can save you money. So if you have a lot of content that you've created over the years for whatever reason, maybe it's ad copy, maybe it's website copy, whatever it is, social media posts, just you may know this or you may not know this, but you feed it into your own personal AI. You teach your AI to write like you. It gets better and better. You teach it to write in the style of what you want your newsletter to look like, and at least it can give you a rough draft of your newsletter. That is what I think where it becomes the most valuable way to do it. So I mentioned the conservative newsletter AI boom. I have a colleague, a guy who helped me create my own newsletter because I didn't know how to do it. And he's a conservative political guy, and he just uses AI to write this daily conservative newsletter digest. Maybe for you, it may not be for me, but whatever. It's for his audience. He has millions of views, and AI creates his newsletter every day. Okay, you can use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, right? They all work. I mentioned here Prompt Cowboy. This is just apropos of nothing, but it's a site and a tool I came across that is really fantastic. As they say in the AI world, a lazy prompt will give you a lazy result. It's the value of your prompt that gets you the best result. All right, so how do you create a great result? Well, maybe your prompt is, I want to create a newsletter for entrepreneurs and their breakthrough moment. Okay, well, I'll get a generic answer, but this cool tool, Prompt Cowboy, takes that lazy prompt and turns it into a very specific, 500 word prompt, and you can get some great answers. So it's just an easy way to use AI to get you some good answers. And you can use AI then to help write your newsletter, right? To give you the links. In my newsletter, that's where I use it. I don't use it to write the essay because that's what I do best. But I have 3 links in every one of my newsletters. I say, and I'll ask my AI, give me 10 links that I can use in the steal this strategy section. I'll get 10 links back. I'll like 3, and I'll put those in the newsletter. So that's a really great way to use AI in your newsletter. And saves you time, saves you money, gives you time, makes you money. That's what we want, right? So let's look at what makes for a good newsletter from the analytical point of view. We want to know what gets opened and what gets clicked. Those are kind of the 2 standards these days. A good open rate typically is around 30%, 40%. My own newsletter probably gets 50%. I'm very proud of that number. But what gets something open? One is it has a great headline. Okay, you have to have a great headline. And, right, and AI can help you write some great headlines. But you have a great subject line that's intriguing, that drives curiosity. Curiosity, oh, there it is, second bullet, really makes a huge difference. If you can drive curiosity and somebody wants to know the answer to the question that you're essentially posing in your headline, then they're going to open it. It needs to be relevant, and of course, you need to offer value. But if you can do those 4 things, have a great subject line that drives curiosity and is relevant, awesome, you're going to get opened. And opened is good because that's when they're going to start to hear from you. What the worst thing is, it never gets opened. We don't want that. We don't like that. What gets clicked? Okay, so that was open. Clicked is typically one main idea. Here's a newsletter I get from Josh Spector. He sends it out daily, and he just says his whole newsletter is about curiosity. You want to know the answer. So he'll say, your answer to this question will inspire a powerful piece of content for you. Oh, Do you want to click on that? Because that makes me want to click on it. That's what I talk about when I mention curiosity. You have a main idea, a clear call to action, an outcome, curiosity. People are going to start to click. And if you get a click through rate, that's really when you can start making money with sponsors. Because sponsors love it when your audience clicks on their link, on their ad. If you can figure out a way to do that in your newsletter, you're going to be making bank from the start. I got you. All right. So let's talk about just some mistakes that happen as people start their newsletter. One is, and I mentioned this earlier, waiting for perfection. One of the reasons Cody Sanchez was so successful with her newsletter, which now has millions of subscribers, is she didn't wait for perfection. Okay, and the dovetail of waiting for perfection is delaying launch. It's so easy to fall into analysis paralysis, and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about it, and you're rewriting it, or you're finding new links, or you're postponing it, right? That's the danger. Really can be a huge mistake. What I say is just send. Okay, I'm going to say it again. Just send. Give it your best shot. Come up with an idea. Come up with something you think your audience is going to like. You might want to test it. Sure, you might want to test it on a few people first. That's fine. And then what do? You just send. All right. Another big mistake, aside from delaying your launch, is lack of consistency. As I said, newsletters are a habit. They are a habit that readers fall into, but they're also a habit that the writer needs to fall into. And if you can just say every Tuesday morning I'm sending out my newsletter, then that's what works. So that consistency helps you create your newsletter, and that consistency also helps your audience learn to expect when they're going to get their newsletter, and that's going to create a higher open rate, a higher click-through rate, because they're going to know when to expect it, when to get it. Finally, let's talk about monetization, woohoo, and performance, the things we all like. So, here's just a simple sales strategy. Right? You teach, you entertain, you inform, and then you offer. Okay? I'll say it again. You teach, you entertain, you inform, then you offer. You know, there's a famous thing in the world of business, the 80-20 rule. I'm sure you've heard of it. That 80% of your income comes from 20% of your clients, or 80% of your clicks come from 20% of your website pages. Well, I want your newsletter to be the same way. I want 80% of your newsletter to be about your audience. 80%. You want to teach them, inform them, entertain them, give them something new, give value. Give 80%. Then at the end, you can make your offer with your 20%. All right, so you create that relationship, you create that habit, you have a clear next step, and you have an offer. All right, so it has to be both of those things. You have to entertain, inform, do what it is you do, and you have to have an offer. Then you are going to start to make money. That's how you sell using a newsletter. You don't lead. Well, once you have an audience and once you have a relationship with your audience, then you can just send a sales newsletter every now and then, a sales email, whatever it is. But until that point, you do this instead. So, monetization one, we're going to talk about all the ways you can monetize. I mentioned these up front, but I'm going to drill down into them a little bit more. You can sell your service. You can sell a consult. You can sell a digital product. You can be an affiliate. And let's just talk about a digital product there for a second. Maybe you have a template, or maybe you have an ebook, or maybe you have a webinar, or maybe you have a video series, a video course. Those are all things that you can sell in your newsletter, right? And of course, if you are a service business, you can sell your service. Da-da. Monetization two. I mentioned this too. The two new the two new kids on the block are Substack and Beehive, and each one has a different way that you can monetize using their system. Substack essentially is used best for a paid membership. If you're going to have a newsletter that has a very high niche audience and a very specific offer, like maybe you work with startup founders and you give them some advice that you've learned from your own startup. You did a startup and you did a Series A and you did a Series B, and you can teach people about that. Well, you create a Substack and you have a paid tier. Alternatively, you can go on to Beehive. And as I mentioned, Beehive is great because they have an embedded ad system. Now, it's probably not going to get you rich unless you get 100,000 followers. But even still, I mean, this is me 2 months ago. 20,000 followers, 43% open rate that month, good click through rate, and I made $2,000 on just that. Not selling my own services, my own coaching. Start your own newsletter, that kind of stuff. But look at that's with a Beehive membership. What is possible? Okay, so what you expect early on, you're gonna have a small list, you're gonna have small wins, and momentum builds. That's that's kind of how it works, right? Everything, as I tell my kids, everything is hard before it's easy, and everything is little before it's big. I started with 100 followers, and I got 20,000 now on my list. Cody started with 100, and she's got way more than me, right? So you're gonna start small, but that's okay. That's how it goes, and it'll be fun as you get going. I promise. All right, the key metrics you want to look at as you get going into this is your open rate, your click-through rate, and conversions. Right, those are the key things you're going to look at to tell you if you're successful or not successful with your newsletter. So next steps. Here's what you think about if this makes sense to you. You don't need to be big, but you do need to be focused. And what I would say is start now. Help is available. Boston Business Mentors, they can help you start your business, right? I can help. One of the things I've been doing a lot is helping people launch their newsletter, whether it's creating the actual newsletter. My team and I can help you do that and make it look beautiful, or even ghostwriting it. I can certainly help with that. And I'm not here to sell my services, but what kind of entrepreneur would I be if I didn't mention that I can help you, right? And you can always sign up for my newsletter. It'll be on the last slide. You can't see it right there. It's illegible. Not good PowerPoint, Steve. All right, so here's a real life example. Some small business, solo business owner. One person business wants to send a weekly newsletter. They use AI to write it. They use Beehive to design it. They hire Steve to help write it. They send it and they monetize it. And you can create a month of content in an afternoon. It doesn't have to be a overwhelming big thing, but you're getting your name out there to your audience again and again and again. They're going to remember you. You're going to be able to monetize it. So those are all great things. All right, I think that's just about it. So here's your action plan for getting started. You're going to pick your provider, right? Constant Contact, Beehive, whatever. You're going to figure out who your audience is, how you're going to solve their problem. You'll create a lead magnet. You'll create a sign-up page to put that lead magnet on. You'll send that first email, and you're going to start to make some money. How fun is that? And how hard is that? Very fun, not very hard. All right, so questions, free handout. I'm happy to answer questions now. There's my email address. Let me just say, so strauss@mrallbiz.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter at news.planetsmallbusiness.com. And there you go. Let's answer some questions. Back to you, Teresa.
Yeah. So I have some people asking a similar type question. Does it make sense to have two different newsletters? Like maybe one for existing customers, one for potential customers, or maybe that your business has like two different branches to it? Does
Yes.
it make
Yeah. So that's absolutely. Let me answer it two ways. One is if you can have one list, and that's great. It does take time to get this started, to launch it, to design it, to get your voice, right? So so that one newsletter is good for that. That said, if you have two very different audiences, you can what's called segment your audience within Beehive or any of those newsletter platforms. You can create two different segments so that maybe you have one newsletter that's generally applicable, and then every now and then you segment them off and you do two different ones. I would say start with one, create two segments rather than creating two different ones, because it can just be a little overwhelming. You're going to also have to, within Beehive, you can have 3 newsletters for the same price. So it's not going to cost you more, but I just think it could get confusing and harder for you as the creator to have two different ones.
Okay. How do you start to build that customer list? One of our examples in chat, they sell their product through a third vendor, like a third party vendor. So they don't have access to those client lists or the clients that are purchasing the items. So how do you get started?
Well, okay, so what I really want everyone to know is you want to own that list. I mean, this is like a key element for why you want to do this is creating a list that you're going to own. So you start by, a lot of people use social, all right, and LinkedIn. I'll give you my example. On LinkedIn, I'll tell one of my stories, and then I'll say, "You want to hear the rest of the story?" I won't finish the story. Look at the link in the comments, and then I'll have the link in the comments, and then people will go click the link, and then they'll go sign up for my newsletter. So what you want to do is create that lead magnet and a page, just a page dedicated for that lead magnet, and then you're going to drive people to that page, and that's how people are going to sign up for it and how they're going to opt in. And you're going to do how are you going to drive people to that page? You're going to do it on your website. You're going to do it in your social. You're going to do it in your business. However you do it, you just need to get the word out how you normally would. But what you're driving them to is a sign up page to get the lead magnet, and that's going to get them to opt into your newsletter.
Can you just use the followers list from your social media?
You don't. You're not going to have their email though. That's the problem with that, right? Turning that Facebook page into email addresses is not the easiest thing in the world. But you can ask those people. You can put the word out to them that you're doing this, and if you have an audience that people like hearing from you, then that's how you convert them into subscribers.
I actually was at a craft fair and they had a QR code with a great
Well,
little,
what a great answer! That's
yeah,
fantastic. Yes.
yeah. Okay. Is there a best day of week, time of day to send a newsletter? Can a newsletter successfully use the brand name versus a personal name? Is starting a newsletter prior to launching the business website running prudent?
Okay. I don't. Yeah, I mean, people tend to say Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but it depends on your newsletter. And people like to say morning, but I like to be contrarian. I send my newsletter out personally in the evening because I think there's less competition in the evening, right? And people are open to reading a story. But maybe yours is very business oriented. Like my woman that I'm creating the medical newsletter for, she wants it to hit during the morning, 7 a.m. East Coast time because hers is a business newsletter for business people about their career. All right, so you got to think about those kind of things. Whether you want to start it before your website's up, great. The sooner the better, right? If you have a list, if you can start to create a list, that's going to just help people generate interest in your startup, in your business, in your website, and you can use your newsletter to launch your business. So I think that's a great idea. Was there one more part of that question I missed?
I think we got it.
Okay.
In the newsletter subject line, is it best to state the problem pain point or
Yes.
benefit of the solution?
Well, anything. You just want to get someone. You don't want clickbait, right? Clickbait is a headline that people are going to click, but doesn't really answer the question. That's quote unquote clickbait. But what you do want to do is drive curiosity. So whether it is you're mentioning the problem, the pain point, at least you have to hint at the solution, or you're just doing the solution. You want something that people are going to find intriguing. And that can be, there's so many different ways. And there's headline helpers. You can actually Google, newsletter headlines or website headlines, and they'll help you rewrite your headlines, your subject line.
Okay, here's a good question. So this person is building their presence on LinkedIn. They're posting like twice a week, solely building that audience. Should the content that they're posting in LinkedIn also be a part of that newsletter, or should
Oh,
they
I think that's a great
relate?
idea. Absolutely. Right. And you might want to mention, this is the kind of, at the end of it, you can find more like this post, you'll find more of it in my newsletter. Click here. And typically, what a little LinkedIn tip is if you put your link in your actual post, LinkedIn doesn't like that. They don't want to drive people off the site. So don't put your link for your newsletter in the post. Put it in the comment. If you put it in the comment, then you don't get dinged by LinkedIn for it. But that said, aside from that, mentioning that you have a newsletter, and in fact, in LinkedIn, it'll offer you the option to visit my website or visit my newsletter, whatever it is. You might want to say visit my newsletter. That's the link people see. That's how you're going to really drive people from LinkedIn to your newsletter.
how do you decide how long the newsletter should be?
It shouldn't be too long. All right, newsletters are a quick read. It's an informal relationship. You know, when I mentioned that long form email from that guy Tim Denning, it's very rare that someone's going to spend 5-10 minutes reading something right in their newsletter. They want it to be brief, and I would suggest you want to think about your newsletter that way too. Brief typically is better because that's just the nature of the beast. People we're in the TikTokification of attention these days, and so remember that.
Okay. I think I've hit
All
all the
right.
questions that were out there. I am just going to quickly put up our little thank you slide. There is a quick connection with a QR code there to get a mentor. And I'll also include that in the follow-up. So definitely watch for that follow-up. It'll have a direct link to the recording today. And yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Steve, so much
Thank
for
you so much,
working
Teresa.
with
Thanks
us.
everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.